It's a true privilege to introduce our guest speaker this morning. Bracha Feder is both an integral part of the Beth Tikvah family and a beloved teacher and guide to so many of us. Her connection to Beth Tikvah runs deep. She grew up in this synagogue and has carried the values, warmth, and love of community that she found here with her throughout her life, even as she's now made her home in Israel. Despite the distance, Bracha has never let go of that connection. She continues to enrich our lives through her teachings, her online classes, and her outreach to those of us especially fortunate enough to visit her in Israel. Bracha holds an MA in Jewish Thought and Education from Hebrew University, and her passion for learning and teaching has left an indelible mark on countless students, teens, adults, and fellow educators alike. For 12 years, she served as an instructor in the Florence Melton Adult Mini School of the Hebrew University here in Toronto. She taught ethics in Jewish living. Many of you might remember her as the coordinator of Judaic programming at the junior high school at Associated, where her insight and dedication shaped young minds. Currently, Bracha offers synagogue adult education courses on a wide range of topics: Jewish thought, Tanakh, Tefillah, Shabbat, holidays. The breadth of her knowledge is remarkable. Her teachings resonate with depth, wisdom, and clarity. They offer each of us the chance to engage more fully with our tradition. Since moving to Jerusalem, she has continued her work, teaching in the Yoded Adult Education Program and leading study programs on the weekly Parsha, always sharing her deep love of Jewish learning, which she takes very seriously. For those of you who have had the opportunity to study with Bracha, either here at Beth Tikvah or online, you know her to be a truly gifted teacher. She has a rare ability to make complex ideas accessible, and her love for Torah and Jewish thought shines in every lesson. Some of you may have had the chance to meet her in Israel. Others became her friends during her time in Toronto or at Beth Tikvah. In every interaction, Bracha exudes warmth, kindness, and a deep sense of caring, genuine caring, for each individual. Throughout the difficult years of COVID, and more recently in the turbulent months following October the 7th, Bracha has been a steadfast source of connection and insight for our community. She has offered us a unique and personal perspective on life in Israel, the joys, the struggles, and the resilience of the people. Through her eyes, we have seen Israel's highs and lows, always with the understanding that she shares not just as an observer, but as someone deeply rooted in both our congregation and the land of Israel. It is with great affection, admiration, and respect that I welcome Bracha Feder to speak to us this morning. Her wisdom, dedication to Jewish education, and her unwavering connection to Beth Tikvah make her a treasured part of our community, no matter where in the world she may be. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our dear guest sermon deliverer this morning and our scholar in residence throughout the weekend, Bracha Feder.
Rabbi Grover, Batya wants me to confirm with you that you no longer put on that ridiculous tourist cap that she took off your head on Rehov Ben Yehuda.
Save it for Israel.
It is indeed wonderful to be here and to see your faces. But in 6 years, there are many faces that I do not see here, and that saddens me. There is a tradition of devoting a class, Le'ilui Nishmatam, to just help those souls be uplifted to heaven just a little more. And with your permission, I'd like to mention just the first names of some of those people I saw regularly here on a Shabbat, a Rosh Hashanah, and indeed it's again sad that I don't see them. Ruthie, Joel, Barbara, Lou, Bill, David, Norman, Lionel, Fred, Yehuda, Millie, Rita, Alan, Annie, Michael, Gersh, and most recently, Malka Bat Avraham Besara. And if there is anyone who I have not mentioned, it's because I did not know them, but of course, they are included in my brachot. Tell me, do you find the following midrash inspiring or too simplistic and naive? Rabbi Alexandri said, 2 donkey drivers who hated each other were walking on a road when the donkey of one lay down under its burdens. His companion saw it, and at first he passed on. But then he reflected, is it not written in the Torah, if you see your enemy's donkey lying down under its burdens and would refrain from raising it, you must nevertheless raise it with him. So he returned, lent a hand, and helped his enemy in loading and unloading. He began talking to his enemy. Release it a bit here, pull up over there, unload over here. Thus, peace actually came between them, so that the driver of the overloaded donkey said, did I not suppose that he hated me? But look how compassionate he has been. By and by, the 2 entered an inn, ate together, and became fast friends. How easily the enemy drivers overcame their feelings of animosity. Far away from a war situation, they did not act in terms of us and them. Peaceful surroundings blur the boundaries of self and other, friend and foe. However, the episode at the end of our Parashat, a surprise, unprovoked attack of the Amalekites and the current nightmare cannot but have us with our backs up. And I hope I didn't just sound defensive. Oh, if King Saul had known the profound significance of his refusal to kill the king of Amalek, the Jewish archetype of pure evil, ancestor of our haters. Doesn't exactly sound like the early warnings the IDF gives us to civilians in Gaza to mitigate harm to them, whether it be through SMS messages, phone calls, and media broadcasts in Arabic. Are the warnings foolproof? Mostly, but sadly, very sadly, not always. War is ugly. It also doesn't help when your caring leaders order you to stay put. So Tzahal, the IDF, and Israel look bad yet again. In bemoaning the kindness to the cruel in Gaza, Canadian scholar Ruth Wiss shares, Hamas leader Sinwar spent 22 years in Israeli prisons for planning the abduction and killing of 2 Israeli soldiers and the murder of 4 Palestinians suspected of collaborating with Israel. He avowed to having strangled at least one of them bare-handed. While in prison, he was diagnosed with and treated for a brain tumor. He was released in 2011 exchange of 1,027 Palestinian criminals for 1 Israeli hostage. After October 7th, the former prison dentist, whose diagnosis saved Mr. Sinwar's life and whose nephew Hamas had murdered, told German media that having gotten to know Mr. Sinwar as a patient, he had opposed his release. I know how cruel he is. Israelis knew that many of the convicted terrorists they freed in hostage exchanges leave with an understanding of their captors' vulnerabilities and re-engage in terrorism. Many of the Israelis slaughtered on October 7th had welcomed Gazans into the communities and their homes. Reluctance to impose the death penalty, belief in saving life at any cost, and a political culture of accommodation have made Jews the most liberal and most easily targeted people in the Middle East. The more Israel has tried to encourage Palestinian self-governance, including by withdrawing from Gaza in 2005, the more Palestinian leaders have fomented violence, culminating in Hamas's cruelties. When a peace-loving civilization indulges its would-be destroyers, it creates a moral imbalance that must end in its own destruction. Israel is learning at too high a cost that the hardest part of protecting liberal democracy is stopping the wicked before they massacre the pure and the good. Let's return for a moment to our pasuk in the Midrash. If you see your enemy's donkey lying down under its burdens and would refrain from raising it, you must nevertheless raise it with him. What is the key word here? The 4-letter word, with. Yes, of course, there are those with whom we share friendly moments. But overall, on a national level, is our notion of with, our reaching out, reciprocal? Yet ours is a tradition defined by concern for others. Even the Exodus story, a narrative yes, of liberation, but certainly of our enslavement and oppression also, rather than alienate us from others, is meant to sensitize us to the other and his or her pain. So we will continue to warn and be humanitarian, unlike the hypocritical Red Cross and UNRWA. Now, if we look closely at our Parsha, we note two interesting juxtapositions. The first, a potentially perplexing juxtaposition of laws. On the one hand, concern for animals. We do not take the mother along with her young, and we do not muzzle an ox when it is treading grain. Yet, at the end of the Parsha, after the command for caring for the poor, orphans, widows, proselytes, and employees, we are commanded to obliterate the entire people of Amalek. Well, friends, this points again to the ugliness of war and Weiss's warning that we must come to grips with the reality of man's potential for evil in the world. There is just no place for mercy with evil. The second juxtaposition. The Parsha begins and ends with talking of war. But the more than 70 mitzvot in between are a call for refinement, caring for the vulnerable, and a demand for going to war while maintaining ethical standards, no matter how easy it would be to be less than human. Torah, as lived by Israel, can contribute to her own and to the betterment of all of humanity. Sanctified living is our goal, not killing. A few months ago, driving, I was listening to Spotify. There's only so much news one can listen to. And one of my favorite singers, John Denver, Zichrono Livracha, caught my attention with a song unfamiliar to me, The Box. Written by Kendrew Lassell, an English-born actor, performer, writer from South Africa, known for raising profile of issues of social conscience, particularly apartheid and the Vietnam War. I share sections of the song that will provide its essence. I find the song particularly disturbing. In particular, 3 parts. See how you feel. Once upon a time, in the land of Hushabye, around about the wondrous days of yore, I came across a sort of box, bound up with chains and locked with locks, and labeled kindly, "Do not touch. It's war." Well, the children understood. They didn't try to pick the locks or break into that deadly box. They never tried to play about with war. Mummies didn't either. Sisters, aunts, grannies, neither. Well, very much the same as now. not the ones to blame somehow for opening that deadly box of war. But someone did. Someone battered in the lid and spilled the insides out across the floor. A sort of bouncy, bumpy ball made up of guns and flags, and all the tears and horror and the death that goes with war. It bounced right out and went bashing all about. And what was sad and most unfair is that it didn't seem to care who much it bumped and why or what for. Now there's a way to stop the ball. It isn't difficult at all. All it takes is wisdom. I'm absolutely sure that we could get it back into the box and bind the chains and lock the looks. No one seems to want to save the children anymore. Well, that's the way it appears. I feel sorry for a country, an army whose commanders feel this way. Disturbing parts, and what was sad and most unfair is that it didn't seem to care who much it bumped, or why, or what for. Why fight if you don't know why? Disturbing part number 2. Now there's a way to stop the ball. It isn't difficult at all. All it takes is wisdom. To stop the ball isn't difficult. All it takes is wisdom. What about the enemy that isn't working with us at all? 3, no one seems to want to save the children anymore. Well, that's the way it appears. No one wants to save the children? Seriously? Do you know the most popular Purim costume this year was soldiers or border police? Why? Not to be macho. No, when children were asked why, to let Abba, Ima, Mommy and Daddy, brothers, sisters know how brave we think they are for protecting us, making sure we are safe. Perhaps the difference between the culture of the Amalekites, Hamas, Hezbollah, and our culture is reflected in the Akedah, the binding of Isaac narrative. Now I ask, especially those of you who are totally taken aback by this episode, to especially listen to this interpretation. Initially, Avram is instructed to deliver Yitzchak to God as a sacrifice, an act that was commonly done at that time by all. At the last minute, the act is halted by a divine angel. The Akedah was staged, explains Rav Moshe Taragin, precisely to debunk any notion that God desires human sacrifice. The Akedah repudiates the concept of human sacrifice as part of religion. Had the Akedah not been staged, this message would not have been as evident. By terminating it at the very last minute, God loudly announced in front of all the other cultures, I don't want human blood. God wants life and cherishes life as we do. And sometimes that means fighting for it. And for as long as we need Sahal, the IDF, may each blessed one of them feel as the soldier in this iconic song feels while he is on duty, recalling when as a child he could only dream of protecting his people. Ani omed al hachoma. I'm standing on the wall, standing alone in the rain, and the entire ancient city is in my palm. I gaze upon it in love. I gaze up here just to watch. But now I'm here on duty. Who even dreamt about it in class when we learned how to recite, upon thy walls, Jerusalem, Al chomotayach Yerushalayim hifkadati shomrim, I have set watchmen, that someday I would become one of them. I'm standing on the wall, standing listening to the sounds of the market and the commotion, the shouts of merchants and carts. Here is the chant of the muezzin, here is the chime of the bell, but I must listen for any explosion of a grenade. I'm standing on the wall, shaking cold and watching. The sun has already set. Guarding at the dark of night, the full moon shines bright, washes over walls and gates. When will come the day when we won't need watchmen anymore? Matai yavo hayom, shebo lo nizdakek od l'shomrim. When will that day come? When?